With the endurance section of the championship done and dusted, it's time to go sprint racing in the Australian Manufacturers Championship. The final two rounds of the series are sprint race based, two 200-kilometre races, and we're getting set for race 2 here at Queensland Raceway. In round 4 of the AmChamp this year for production cars, it's been an exciting season so far. The endurance titleists have been awarded. This guy won in Class A in the mighty BMW 1M, but it's a different kettle of fish when it comes to the shorter races that make up the second half of the year, and this round in particular is a real highlight. This is how the points sit coming into the round. In Class A, it's Beric Linton leading the father and son combo of Robert and Shane Marshall. Grant Sherrin leads Class B. Ian Sherrin second. Peter O'Donnell sits third for GWS Motorsport. In Class C, Jake Camilleri has a handy lead over Scott Nicholas, his co-driver, with Rick Shaw and Michael Sloss in the 35 car third. And fourth, Luke King leads Kevin Herbin in Class D, but that will change this weekend because Luke King is not running. Gary O'Brien joins me in commentary. GOB, always a highlight. Saturday night, the fight in the night. And this was a weird motor race.
Wow, it had everything in it. We had crashes, we had safety car issues, we had all sorts of dramas. But in the end, of course, it was that Holt-Costera combination that got to the line first. At
one point, the race was suspended and the field brought into pit lane to reshuffle the order, but Queensland Raceway came alive under lights. A fantastic sight with a good field setting off for 200 Ks. In the end, the race went 59 laps, and Gary Holt and Stuart Costera got the victory, with Aaron Seaton sharing the lead throughout the race and ended up finishing in second place. Matt Cherry home in third in the Kintyre Racing Audi TTRS on debut. That car going really well. Jake Camilleri fourth and won Class C. The Class B winner back in 8th position for Sharon Rentals Grunt and Ian Sherrin in the BMW 135i. But it was a fascinating race, a really dramatic affair, and it set the scene for Sunday's second 200k event. So the cars on grid for race 2, 200 kilometres in bright sunshine as distinct from the lights of Saturday night here at Queensland Raceway. Now we'll take you through the full grid, but at first we're going to take a look back at what happened in classes C and D before we show you what went on in the outright fight here in the Australian Manufacturers Championship. And there was plenty of great racing all the way throughout the field. After that wild encounter on Saturday night, Gary Holt and Stuart Costera start from pole in the Mitsubishi Evo 10. Aaron Seaton from second. The Audi TT Gary going really well in third. And Jake Camilleri grabbed pole for Class C in the Mazda 3 MPS. Over the field and over the page, Kevin Herbin looking good in the Candy Warehousing Honda, but the class victory on Saturday night went to the Petters Racing Toyota 86 of Grant Phillips and Andrew Turpey, and they would be a factor in Class C and D. Thanks to Hancock, we take a look back at the class battles in the AmChamps, and this was an entertaining battle the whole way through.
And Grant Phillips gets the jump in Class D as big cars go storming through from the back of the grid. BMWs had all sorts of problems in the night.
Yeah, it was a good battle in the early stages between Kevin Herbin and the Turpey Phillips Petters Racing 86, and that would be a battle that would be unfolding the whole way through. Another fight in the night win for the Petters team on Saturday night, bouncing back from that big crash at Sydney Motorsport Park where the car went in the fence at turn 4. They bounced back and got to the end, but it was a pretty dramatic turn of events for them.
Certainly was, and still carrying some of those battle scars into this race as we see the Honda leading the Toyota through there, and that was about as far apart as they got in the early stages.
Yeah, they were very close the whole way through this 200k race. This is the Class C Ford Falcon XR6 Turbo of George Karadimas and Michael Gray behind the wheel this weekend, as this great fight continued with Kevin Herbert going solo this weekend. He shared this car with Luke King in the opening couple of rounds, but Luke sitting on the sidelines for this one. Kev going solo, and with Luke not here, a good result in this race would give Kevin a really good points margin in the Class D point standings.
And as you can see, that battle just continued for lap after lap. One stage we thought one had the advantage in the straight line, and then we've seen it the other. And in this particular case, the Honda goes past the Toyota down the front straight.
Past a big display of Toyota 86s and Subaru BRZs parked on the entry to turn 1. The local clubs getting involved with the sport here at Queensland Raceway. Herbin ran wide and then pitted, but a slight mistake. This was his pit stop in the race, and it would turn out to be a fuel strategy for this car, and it got towards the end of the race where they had to work really well. Compulsory pit stop regs, running a single driver, jump out, then strap back in.
Exactly, and if you have to do a fuel stop, you have to do that separately.
The Class C leader, as it has been for most of the weekend, was Jake Camilleri, local driver. The Grand Prix Mazda squad always punch above their weight in the AmChamps, coming off a pretty good run at Sydney Motorsport Park in the 4-hour, the end of the Australian Endurance Championship season, and liking to mix it up with the Class B and even Class A cars here at QR, and the Mazda going really well.
And of course, Camilleri giving the front-running cars some hurry up. And of course, in the class behind him, there was certainly some action going on as well. Here we have the Network Clothing Renault Megane just putting another lap on the BMW 130i.
Yeah, the second and third placed cars in Class C. That Renault Megane going really well. They had a pretty tough endurance championship schedule, as did this crew. Tyre issues after some brake issues on Saturday night in the fight of the night. It was, well, not a highlight for them, but for us watching from the sidelines to see the massive glowing brake discs on this big heavy Falcon with a number of heavy stops here at Queensland Raceway. But a left rear puncture for that team caused them some issues, and the Australian Auto Wreckers car went to pit lane to complete a pit stop. Tyre came off and George Karadimas jumped out of the car. Michael Gray jumped in. Mick driving this weekend. Daughter Lauren usually in the car. She's overseas at the moment, so Mick got the call up at the last minute to jump in. George caught up with Summer Bogue in pit lane to tell her about the dramas.
It wasn't the result that you wanted, but I mean, what an incredible effort just to get it in safely.
Yeah, it blew a left rear tyre. I was going down a lap before. I wasn't sure what it was. I thought it might have been a rear suspension or something. I tried to go past the front straight one more time, and it blew coming onto the front straight and put it sideways, but I managed to catch it, and then driving it around sideways every corner, it's like doing drifting, but yeah, no, it was good. I got it back in, the boys changed it, the car's back out, it'll soldier on.
Unfortunately, Gary, no sooner had Michael Gray taken the wheel, this happened, another puncture.
Yeah, and unfortunately for Mick Gray, he's on the wrong side of the road there, whereas George managed to keep his on the gravel a bit to try and save the tyre a little bit to get it back to the pits. Some
new support from the Casabine Group jumping on board with this team. They've got an ambitious program planned for 2015 in the AmChamp Series. Compulsory pit stop for Jake Camilleri in the Grand Prix Mazda team. These guys so well drilled, so experienced. As Mick Gray limped the Falcon back to pit lane, they would just try and preserve and get this car to the checkered flag and be classified a finisher. That would have been a win for them in this race, as the Grand Prix Mazda team leaves pit lane. Camilleri going along nicely.
Yeah, I don't think he lost the lead in that. That's how far in front he's been in this race. But as we mentioned before, plenty going on in their wake.
Mazda 3 MPS, Colin Osborne and Nick Lungy teaming up this weekend. Our thoughts continue to be with Brock Giblin and his family recovering in hospital in Sydney after the events at Sydney Motorsport Park. Colin and Nick teaming up in the Soul car from Osborne Motorsport this weekend. Francois Joy jumping out of the Renault Megane RS265. Mark Eddy jumping in. Let's hear from him now.
Today, compared to last night, the car is a bit slower, but I think it's for everybody the same. Turbocharged car don't like heat. But the car is just perfect, you know, we're just circulating, and, you know, there's nothing wrong with the car, so it's going to be hard to beat Jake, but, you know, if we can finish second, we'll be happy, because we had a bit of bad luck before, so it will be great. It's fantastic. Thank you very much.
What's the plan of attack here? Will it need refueling?
There is no plan of attack. We won't have to refuel, so now it's finished. Mark's going to finish first stint, and hopefully, you know, we'll finish second, or maybe first. Who knows? You never know in endurance racing.
It's nice to have some exotic accents too, and well done to the Dentbuster Network Clothing team. They put on a great show this weekend. Competitive car. It's a big ask to catch the Grand Prix Mazda 3 MPS though, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. The class front runners, no doubt about that at all. It's just a couple of reliability issues in the past have been solved, and that thing's just unbeatable now.
They've soldiered on, and the Queenslander Jake Camilleri, who's been trying his hand at endurance racing overseas with the Mark Focuses, the Ryan McLeod project has been going very, very well.
And seen here putting a lap on the Osborne lane car as we see him negotiate Queensland Raceway and head up the back straight again.
Meanwhile, a little bit further up, this was Class D versus Class C. Some of the outright cars in there as well, and this was a busy time of the race. Michael Gray behind the wheel of the Australian Auto Wreckers Falcon. Kevin Hervin going past in the Honda Integra. second car running for the Osborne Motorsport team. Bronte Michael jumping behind the wheel of the 21 car with Robbins this weekend. So great to see some new faces in AmChamp this weekend.
Bit close as they negotiate some of the traffic there, and Nick Gray off the track again. I don't think it was because of a puncher this time though.
No, just a little bit wide. This was Herben continuing to lead the class, but at this stage in the game, Gary, starting to wind it back. Now, another thing to remember, he had a 5-second penalty looming over him for a false start, or being over his grid box at the start line. So he needed to be more than 5 seconds in front of the Petters Racing Toyota at the end of the race. As it was closing down, he was saving fuel. That margin was closing in.
Yeah, it was going to be quite close at the finish, but certainly wasn't close in Class C as we watched the Renault head down towards turn 4.
Still a great outright result on the cards for the Class C cars, especially Camilleri running 4th outright for most of this race. Mark Eddy and Francois Joy running P5 and doing a really good job in that Renault Megane RS265 and not lacking a huge amount of pace compared to the Mazda 3 now. The checkered flag came out for Jake Camilleri. He won the class, continued his very impressive run this season, and Kevin Herben got the flag in Class D. And when you take into account his 5-second penalty added to his race time, his winning margin over the Petters Toyota, 2.2 seconds.
Yeah, no wonder the thumb was up.
He was pretty happy with that. So well done to Jake Camilleri, beating Ho Marchetti and Francois Joy in Class C, with Rick Shaw and Michael Sloss in 3rd. Kevin Herben got the win in Class D ahead of the sister Honda Integra. The Toyota 86 finished 3rd.
Yeah, that race went like clockwork for us. Yes, last night a lot cooler, and the car just loved it. 4th and 1st in class, and we just got another 4th in. Yeah, so we're pretty happy with that.
But Toyota put up a massive fight. I'm so glad to get one on them after last night, and I think it came down to the pit stop in the end. I've spoken to Sarah. Sarah helped me out in the driver change, so big thanks to Sarah Harley. Yeah, bring on Wakefield Park, goes to the next round.
Checking the point standings now after 4 of 5 rounds in the AmChamp this year. Jake Camilleri, a handy lead in Class C over Rick Shaw and Michael Sloss. In Class D, Kevin Herben has almost clinched the class title. Grant Phillips and Andrew Turpey tied on 2nd and 3rd place in the Petters Racing Toyota. We're going to take a break from Queensland Raceway. Our coverage of the Shannon's Nationals continues on the other side of this with the outright fight, the Australian Manufacturers Championship. Stick around, there's more to come. Welcome back to Queensland Raceway, our continuing coverage of round 6 of the Shannon's Australian Motor Racing Nationals and round 4, the Australian Manufacturers Championship. We've seen the baby car classes. It's time to take a look at the outright fight. Thanks to Hancock, classes A and B. The battle for the outright victory. Gary O'Brien alongside me for this one. This was a great race. This was a great start for Beric Linton from the very back of the field after a DNF in Saturday night in a battle-scarred BMW. It was like a video game on the run into turn 1. He carved his way through the field. Yeah,
everyone got out of his way, which is really good as well. But up in front, it's all Evos with the 2 protagonists from Saturday night coming at it again.
It's a compelling little battle, this, and it's evolved over the course of the season between the Product Racing crew, who won the Great Southern 4-Hour at Phillip Island, and the Eastern Creek Karts team, who won the Australian 4-Hour at Sydney Motorsport Park. But the Product team was really in contention for that race, and Aaron Seaton was arguably the star of that race meeting. The field sorted themselves out early, and Beric continued to plough his way through the field and got onto the back of the leading Mitsubishis early in the race, early in the opening lap.
Yeah, and he wasn't satisfied with just being behind them as well. He wanted to take them on. He wanted to show that the BMWs have got the pace to get out in front and run away with this.
A battle-scarred car after a bit of contact. All the BMWs seemed to self-destruct in the fight in the night on Saturday night. It was a tough one, but Beric went right around the outside of Gary Holt, who started the Eastern Creek Karts Mitsubishi Lancer Evo 10 RX. And that was a great fight for second. You can see the Product car, Aaron Seaton, leading the way early on.
Beric Linton into second, Holt into third, and we mustn't forget the Audi. It's done a great job to be in 4th position.
Yeah, Matt Cherry was having a fight for 4th with Rob and Shane Marshall in the Melbourne Performance Centre Mitsubishi Lancer Evo 10. This car has a lot of potential. This car, a brand new built car for this weekend, purpose built for AmChamp Racing. They have two cars now, one a former tarmac rally car built by Alan Heafy, the great man who actually engineered most of the Mitsubishis that have come into AmChamps over the years. So, you know, he can build a pretty handy bit of kit.
Exactly, and one who'll know what the opposition has in store for him every time they run against them.
First into the pits was the Class B BMW 335i. Peter O'Donnell sharing the driving duties with Anthony Gilbertson this weekend.
Yeah, this car went out on the first lap the night before, so they didn't get much of a run. And Peter O'Donnell limping out of the car, due for a hip replacement surgery after this event, and hopefully we'll be back by the time we get to the end of the year. We
wish him well with that. The battle for second continued. Gary Holt retook the position away from Beric Linton, but the way the race was panning out at the moment, Aaron Seaton, who technically is running in invitational class this weekend, but he's amongst that Class A fight. He was skipping away with his field, and it really was a race for second. And these two had a really good show as they worked their way through lap traffic. Mitsubishi v BMW. It's been one of the great stories in the AmChamps for some time.
Yeah, BMW Evos have been at it all season long, and going into this one, you wouldn't have wondered where the Evos were at that point, considering they were that far in front of the BMWs. BMW fight back on in this race.
Aaron Seaton pounding away out in front. This was a great performance, consistent lap times. He's been in the car since the Australian 4-hour where he performed so strongly. Only broken wheel studs on that car ruled them out. This is the Mick Benton and Jeff Russell FPV GT Ford Falcon running in Class B. Coming in, they were third in Class B. Really a great story, the Master and the Apprentice.
Yeah, and also had some dramas in that first race night before, and a spectacular off down to turn 3, and a good fight back.
Used to work for one another back in the day. One was the apprentice of the other, and they've swapped roles since joining the AmChamp series. The number 18 Sharon BMW comes in. Meanwhile, the Class B GWS Personnel BMW, one of the most successful production cars in Australian motorsport. A couple of 12-hour victories, a few championships as well in the hand of Gary Holt, and some class titles in Peter O'Donnell's hands, and wins with John Bowe as well. It's a great car and still continues to be fast and reliable at the front of his field.
Yeah, Gilbertson at the wheel at the moment, and not unfamiliar if the car has driven it in the past in the 12-hour.
Holt pits from second place. This was lap 31, a 65 lap or 200k race. So about halfway through, splitting the race in half on fuel. And Stuart Costera, the triple champion, would jump in the car. Let's hear from Gary Holt. As soon as he jumped out of the car, he caught up with Andrew in pit lane to find out how his opening stint went and the battle with the BMW.
I'm with Gary Holt from the Eastern Creek Evo, and Gary, you just had your pit stop, driver change. How was it for you?
Mate, it was a great race. Yeah, young Aaron, he got me there at the start, which was good. He did well. I didn't think he'd get around the outside of me, but he did. Look, our attitude is to try and finish second, Aaron, because we got qualified on points. If he finished first and we finished second, then we've won the round after winning last night. So that's the strategy, but there's a little bit of a thorn in our side, and that's Beric Linton, because he's flying out there, and Beric and myself had a great race, a really good dice. I'm sure he enjoyed it as much as what I did. Stewie's in the car now. We've just done our pit stop, but we're doing a double pit stop. So we're taking a gamble that there's no safety car. So here comes the car in now for the fuel stop, you know. So the strategy is, because we go out in a slow lap, come back in a slow lap, you make more time than being on a fast lap. Now, to the viewers back home, that might not make sense, but it all works out on paper.
And but for an unfortunate turn of events for the product car, it wouldn't have been a strategy that quite worked for them, but in the end it did. This is the pit stop for the Kintyre Racing Audi TT, running without a dry brake system in this car at this stage, so the more old school pump system, but this has been a good run from this team.
It has. What you normally see at your local garage when you pull up to get fueled. And of course we go back out, and here's this Falcon still circulating, and what a great job after the dramas they had the night before.
We should talk about that. Massive issues off at turn 3 with a collapsed right front on that car and well buried in the sand.
Yeah, real good light show as well.
It was, wasn't it? Yeah, massive dramas, sparks and all sorts of dramas as that car barreled down into the fastest and heaviest stop on the racetrack, but great to see Mick Benton and Jeff Russell back out running inside the top 10. This is the second of the Sharon Rentals BMWs. They're second in Class B at the moment.
Had a great run in the night, even though they were involved in a couple of incidents, but fortunately didn't come off too bad, and now we've got our race leader in.
Final stop for Aaron Seaton, the Product Racing crew. Jumping in, Glenn Seaton on the headset, his dad and double championship winning touring car driver coaching him through. Berwick Linton made his final stop. The Marshals came in for a driver change, and great to have this combo back, having missed the last round. See Troy Russell from Melbourne Performance Centre just helping with the driver change there.
Shane Russell started this race, and of course Robert taking over.
And this was the driver change for the FPV GT Falcon. Mick Benton and Jeff Russell doing the job. 10 seconds was the margin for Aaron Seaton in the closing stages of this race. It looked like a surefire victory was in their grasp, and what a drive it was though for the young Seaton, 16 years of age. After a breakout performance in the 4-hour at Sydney Motorsport Park, he backed it up this weekend.
Yeah, and when the other teams are conceding that they can't catch him, that tells you a lot, doesn't it?
Gary Holt very complimentary about racing him. Unfortunately, not so complimentary was the reliability on the 22 Mitsubishi. They had dramas. The Marshals were out of the race. The bonnet went up on the Evo 10, and the MPC team would go no further. A real shame for a team that missed the last round due to some overseas business commitments, but they're back. Unfortunately, their race ended towards the end. The second race here at Queensland Raceway. Let's hear from Shane Marshall. He's down in pit lane.
I'm with Shane Marshall from the 22 Evo, and Shane, it's not looking good for you guys.
Nah, jumped in and all the red lights were on and flashing high temp, and car didn't feel quite as responsive as it did last night, so day's over.
How many laps did you get under your belt?
Probably one flyer,
Right.
and that was it, so, oh well.
And what do the mechanics think the problem is?
I think maybe a head gasket, but when I was out there, the radio wasn't working either, so I had no way to communicate. Temperature just kept going up, and decided to come in, and yeah.
A real shame for the Marshals after a strong top 5 performance. Aaron Seaton pitted. Fuel going in, the Product Mitsubishi. This would be the decisive stop, and everyone was watching the Eastern Creek Karts crew that were running round behind them for track position, as Berwick Linton continued to pound on in second place.
Well, he's done a great job, hasn't he, to come back from where they were and to take the fight right up to the Evos.
Yeah, and on strategy, this was actually got the 40 car in front for a couple of laps. It didn't have the outright pace to go with Aaron Seaton and the raw speed, but it did get them in a position to contend at least towards the end of the race.
Yeah, and it was always going to be a question mark whether they would need to do a fuel stop or not.
As it turned out.
Watching some of the other Class B competitors. This is the second of the Sharon entries, plus the GWS personnel car, Anthony Gilbertson at the wheel, and they were involved in a first lap incident last night. Those two particular cars, one was out for the race, the other one battled on, and ended up quite a good result for them. That's the car we see in the frame, of course.
So 53 laps into the race, and this was the battle for second place in Class B between the BMWs and the FPV GT.
Just up the road in front of them.
So they were having a great race, and Gilbert's doing a really good job behind the wheel of the 335i Turbo. Gary Manell and the On-Track Motorsport team preparing that. Gee, it's busy in an Am-Champ race. Lapped cars, it's all going on. Benton and Russell gets by the 28 car.
And the 28 car got past the 19 car. So it's all on those two BMWs. Same engine, just different body shapes. Like, whoa, got a drama here.
Yeah, now this, crucially, was off the 33 car, Aaron Seaton. Wow, the luck of the Seatons in major endurance races. A broken exhaust, the car was black flagged, or bad sportsmanship flag, told to pit because of the noise and the fact there were bits hanging off the exhaust in the bottom of the car. And that ruled them out of the race from a race-winning position. The Product crew out of the game and unfortunately would go no further. Glenn and Aaron were in pit lane speaking to our team down there to find out what went on.
Glenn, bitterly disappointing. You were in the lead, the cars come in, what's happened?
Well, the second half of the exhaust system's come off. It's broken away probably about halfway along the car, and Frank, the technical guy for cams, thinks it's a bit risky, which I probably don't disagree with him, because these things do flame a bit on trials throttle, so you just don't know what sort of things that can burn under there. It is very bitterly disappointing in one way that the kid drove so good, and it's a very proud moment.
How are you feeling at the moment? Did you know there was anything wrong with the car?
Yeah, about halfway through it, the noise, it started to get a little bit louder and louder, and then probably about maybe 10 laps from the end, going into the last turn, that just had kind of like a little bang, and then it went really loud, and it's just a shame. Just what can you do?
While it was disappointment for the Product team, it was delight for Eastern Creek Karts Racing. Gary Holtz and Stuart Costera behind the wheel inherited the race lead.
Yeah, and that's the way it was going to be. But I think even they would be a bit surprised about whether they could have got to the front. They weren't going to do it on pace, that's for sure.
No, and the strategy cars didn't quite work for them either. They would have been second. They probably would have won the round regardless. But in the end, it worked out that they would inherit the race lead. A strong performance nonetheless. A great drive through the field, it must be said, for Barrick Linton. He got to second place. Remarkable performance. The 19 car.
This time, this car was the more reliable of the two Sharon Rentals BMWs. The other car had turbo issues in race one, and it didn't quite have the pace here either today.
Yeah, they pounded around, but on the final lap, it was Stuart Costera behind the wheel of car 20. What a run, a championship run perhaps this team has put together in the second half of the season. They have been dominant since that Australian 4-hour.
Well, this is the same story they had last year. They started off poorly with some DNFs, but now they've put their car back together again properly, and it's coming home with the goods.
It would, however, set up a really nice title fight in AmChamp going into the final round. But at Queensland Raceway, the story was a double victory for Eastern Creek Karts Racing. Gary Holt and Stuart Costera got the class win. A great performance, and well done to that team for backing up their fight in the night win with another strong performance on Sunday at Queensland Raceway. Grant and Ian Sherrin came home first in Class B, and there were dramas at the final corner for the 28 GWS personnel entry off at turn 6.
Still managed to get home in second in class, which is a great effort from them from the back of the field.
Not bad for Peter O'Donnell, just married too, but with a dodgy hip, as we confirm results for you. Holt and Costera first in Class A in front of Barrick Linton. The remainder of the Class A cars failing to finish. In Class B, it was Grant and Ian Sherrin first, Pete O'Donnell and Anthony Gilbertson second, Mick Benson and Jeff Russell completed the podium finishes in Class B. DNFs for David Ayres, Aaron Seaton, Matt Cherry and the Marshals.
There was bad luck there with young Aaron Seaton, you know, but that's all part of motor race. We had bad luck the first two rounds too, but certainly it was a great effort for the team and Stewie, and you know, as I said, we had bad luck the first two rounds, and these last two rounds we had a bit of luck, and you need a bit of luck.
I think after your fuel stop, I think you dropped back to 5th or 6th, so there was a fair bit of overtaking to do to get that lead back. How did it happen?
Yes, well, the boys didn't inform me of that. They just kept saying push, 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 and you know, that was all the encouragement I needed. So I knew we'd be a fair way back after stopping 2 laps in a row, but if it didn't go yellow, which it didn't, that was the right strategy.
Yeah, look, it was actually quite a tough day. We went out, we had problems in the warm-up, and we were about 25% down on power. We thought we fixed it, went out, still 25% down on power, so we did the whole race that way. So we thought, bugger it, let's just go the fuel strategy, go as long as we can. So we made it through with 1 tank of fuel. Grant was rolling around a half pace out there at the end, but we got through, and 3rd outright, first in class, still on the podium.
Yeah, it was a great result. It was really good. We had the other car behind us, the other Sherrin car behind us, and they were pushing us, but we just had that gap on them to start with, so we could conserve the fuel, and that's what got us home, really, that gap to start with.
The brothers did a good job to take Class B. It's a title fight on in Class A, though. Barrick Linton leads Stuart Costera 297 points to 244, with Gary Holt third on 242. So the championship will be decided at Wakefield Park. In Class B, it's Grant Sherrin leading his brother Ian by just 8 points, with Peter O'Donnell back in 3rd place and out of the championship fight. So there's plenty to play for going into the final round of the AmChamp Series when we get to Wakefield Park the week after the Bathurst 1000, the Shannon's Nationals this October.